We begin with the 119th Congress, which opens on Friday. Up first, voting for a House Speaker. Mike Johnson needs at least 218 members to vote for him when Congress starts. It will be 219 Republicans to 215 Democrats. As Fox News senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram points out, quote, the House absolutely, unequivocally cannot do anything until it elects a speaker, period. This also means that the House cannot certify the results of the Electoral College, making Trump the 47th president of the United States on January 6th. What happens if the Electoral College isn't sorted out by January 20th? Well, President Biden is done. So he's gone. The same with Harris. Next in the presidential line of succession is the Speaker of the House. Well, there's no speaker, so who becomes the president? If the House is still frittering away time trying to elect a speaker on January 20, President pro tem of the Senate, Chuck Grassley, likely becomes president, acting president. I write likely because this gets into some serious extra constitutional turf. These are unprecedented scenarios, strange lands never visited in the American political experience, end quote. Let's bring in House Oversight Chairman James Comer. Congressman, boy, it all starts on Friday. It's hard to believe it's upon us. But the biggest question is, can the Republicans stay united? Will they vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker on the first ballot, or will this continue on for days and who knows how long?
Well, I sure hope we can do it on the first ballot. As you know, Jason, the process is the House Republicans, or whoever the majority is, if the Democrats had won the majority, they'd have done the same thing. We meet in December. We nominate people to run for leadership, including the Speaker of the House. Whoever wins, then everyone agrees, all right, we're going to all support our Speaker nominee on the floor. No one ran against Mike Johnson. To this day, here we are inside a week of the Speaker's vote. There is still not a single declared candidate. But as you know, we have 5 Republicans that won't commit to voting for Mike Johnson. They can only lose 1 or 2 votes. So I sure hope we don't repeat this. And I'm strongly encouraging my colleagues to go ahead and elect Mike Johnson. And let's get started on passing President Trump's agenda.
Well, Andy Harris, who is the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus, he is not necessarily fully committed. What about those 5 people? I mean, this is going to be the challenge, Congressman. Every single time a vote comes up, can the Republicans stay united? Because 2 people go the different direction, you can't get from here to there.
It's a terrible challenge. We've seen it play out over the past 2 years. It was very difficult for Kevin McCarthy. It's been very difficult for Mike Johnson. It would be very difficult for whomever would be elected Speaker of our conference. But at the end of the day, the difference between the 119th Congress and the 118th Congress is we'll have a Republican president, a strong Republican president who's very popular with Republican congressmen's constituents back home, and that's Donald Trump. I strongly encourage Donald Trump to get on the phone with those 5 or 6 members who won't commit to voting for Mike Johnson, because all this is going to do is delay us. It's going to delay the certification of President Trump's election. It's going to delay the start of his first 100 days in office, which is the most important time frame of his whole presidency. That's when you get the most done historically. So I strongly encourage President Trump to get on the phone and try to get everyone united so we can work together as a team and make America great again.
Well, Congressman, I should say Chairman, I used to chair that committee. You chair it now. You have jurisdiction over the federal workforce. Now, there have been a lot of allegations that the Biden administration has tried to Trump-proof, if you will, this administration by, striking deals so that federal workers don't have to come back to work. They can telework and do things like that. What are you going to do? What are you seeing? What are you worried about with the federal workforce and their ability to come in and do the job that the American taxpayers are paying for?
Well, you're exactly right, and I've said this many times publicly. Joe Biden's trying to burn it down on the way out. With respect to the federal workforce, every hardworking, tax-paying American who works in the private sector is appalled that such a high percentage of the federal workers aren't showing up for work. They're working from home. We have a bill that we passed out of the House last Congress. Of course, the Democrat Senate wouldn't take it up. We'll pass it out again this Congress, hopefully in the first 2 weeks of this Congress, called the Show Up Act, that will require the federal workers to go back to work. And I strongly support DOGE, my committee, the House Oversight Committee, your old committee, Jason. We're going to work closely with Elon Musk and Ramaswamy, and we're going to try to make the federal government more efficient. I think we have too many federal employees. There are too many duplicative services being performed by too many federal employees. There are too many federal employees who aren't showing up for work. Their productivity has gone down even below what the low standards of government employees' productivity is to begin with. And it's gonna start by bringing them back to work, trying to figure out what they do, and just trying to get the backs of the taxpayers and make government more efficient.
It is stunning how many people are still living under the COVID rules and supposedly teleworking from afar, leaving these federal buildings so empty and so unused, and the lack of collaboration that happens along the way. Now, obviously, one of the things the Oversight Committee has is jurisdiction on so many of these scandals that are going on. As you look down the agenda here, and I should mention, you've got a new book coming out, and I'm excited about this. All the President's Money comes out, where you're going to go back and look at what Joe Biden and Hunter Biden and that flow of money that was coming through. That is one thing that you'll probably continue to follow through on. But what are some of the other key investigations that the Oversight Committee is prioritizing going into the 119th Congress?
From an investigation standpoint, we need to hold people accountable. And you look at, with respect to what's come out this week, with the pictures that the National Archives never would release, that show that Joe Biden lied. He did, in fact, introduce his son to all these Chinese people. Joe Biden did, in fact, meet with all these Chinese people that were wiring his family millions of dollars for mysterious reasons. And we knew it, and I think the American people with common sense knew it. But what's most troubling, Jason, is how many people in the federal government knew that Joe Biden was lying when he said he didn't know why his family was getting all that money, when he said he never met with any of these people. The CIA knew, the IRS knew, the FBI knew. They need to be held accountable. The National Archives, not only have they sat on those pictures and they were only released because of a lawsuit, they also never have released the pseudonym emails. This agency will be brought in front of the House Oversight Committee, and they're going to have to explain themselves as to why they obstructed our investigation. I want to work with Kash Patel. I want to work with all the new Trump cabinet secretaries, where we can hold the deep state actors accountable, because the American people have lost confidence in the government. And I think what role oversight will play in this new administration is trying to drain the swamp, and that's going to begin by getting these federal bureaucrats who have abused their power. They're unelected. They've not been held accountable. No one's overseen them. There are no checks and balances, and bring them in and try to get them, at the very least, terminated, and try to get reforms in place to where this can never happen again, and the American people can begin to have confidence in their government agencies again.
Yeah, most people, I think, don't realize that, or at least the allegation is that Joe Biden was using a pseudonym, as you talked about, a fake name, to be able to communicate, which violates and bypasses the Federal Records Act. And it'll be interesting to see who and how that was all communicated with. And when you don't show up at the White House and you work out of your residence at home, again, you get to bypass a lot of traditional things that are embedded in the law. But you talk generally about waste and fraud and abuse, and look, you do yeoman's work in highlighting this, but give us some highlights, give us an idea of where those priorities are, because, you know, it's laudatory to be able to talk about, oh, hey, we're going to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, but what specifically can you get at?
Well, one of the big areas of waste and abuse in the federal government are fraudulent payments. Our information technology systems in the federal government are 1980s technologies. They're very susceptible to being hacked, and they're being hacked by foreign actors. And it's not just the unemployment insurance funds. It's not just the COVID money. There are SBA loans. There are so many grants within the federal government where fraudulent payments are going on. In Medicare, Medicaid, people are being paid fraudulently. One of the things that Musk and Ramaswamy want to do that hasn't gotten much attention, but I think they would know as much about as anybody, is updating the technology, modernizing the technology to prevent fraud. I mean, fraudulent payments go out every day in the federal government, and our government isn't equipped to be able to go after them, especially if they're from fake accounts in African countries or in European countries. There's no mechanism in place to go back and claw that money back and hold people accountable. So at the very least, we need to fix our technology. And we've never had anyone take the initiative to do that in the federal government. And that's one of the things that DOJ wants to do, and hopefully our committee will work with.
Well, Chairman Comer, you got your hands full. Big vote starting on Friday. It'll be interesting to see how that goes, particularly for Mike Johnson. Congressman James Comer, thank you. Do appreciate it.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.